You know, I think the most eye-opening thing that has happened to me since I found out that I was autistic, with little sprinkles of, ADHD, is that not everybody thinks the way I do, and not everybody processes information the way I do. And that's literally blowing my mind, because I thought everybody did the exact same thing per se, and that I just didn't get the instructions. So I think, speak, and hear and process everything as pictures or as a movie going through my head. And I asked my husband if he thinks in pictures, if he does the same thing, and he was like, God, no. He goes, how could I pay attention to what's being said if I was doing all of that? Well, one of the biggest issues that I've had with communication my whole life has been my processing time. Somebody will ask me a question and I have to think about it before I respond. And typically what happens is it's taking me so long to process, they've asked 2 or 3 more questions and stacked them on top of that. Or they're like, are you paying attention? And then of course that gets me even more flustered, and then my processing time is either longer or it just stops and it's just non-existent, and I've completely forgotten, what the subject matter is. And so that's been really frustrating for me. Biggest frustration has been trying to explain what's going on in my mind. Like, I don't understand idioms, those things that are sentences or phrases that mean something else other than what it's supposed to mean, like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. I automatically envision 2 birds being shot out of the sky with a slingshot and falling to the ground and being killed. And then after I visualize that, then I have to take that phrase, restructure it into what I think the meaning is. And that all takes time. And so I do that with everything. I had a boss once that came in and was like, we need to sit down and talk about the elephant in the room. I literally saw an elephant in the room, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this elephant is really big and it has a really long trunk and it's got some hay sticking up out of its mouth. I wonder what the skin feels like. And while I'm doing all of that, my boss is going like this, probably yelling at me about a project that I missed or a deadline that I missed, or, something. And all I see is his mouth moving because there's an elephant in the room. I can't think of anything else but that. And so I asked my husband, more specific. I asked my husband more specific. Oh. I asked him more questions. And I said, so if I say apple, what do you see? And he says, I don't see anything. He goes, I'm just thinking apple. I'm like, you don't see an apple? And he's like, no. He's like, what do you see? I said, well, it depends on my mood. I said, like right now, I said, just saying the word apple, I said, I'm thinking of an apple. It's sitting on a round wooden table in a library. There's a bunch of books around, and there's, pretty things on the table, and, everything like that. And he's like, wow. He goes, all of that for the word apple? And I said, oh, absolutely. And I said, so if you're asking me like just a standard question, like, did you go to the grocery store today? I'm going to be like thinking about driving to the grocery store, parking, walking in, thinking about what I want to buy, and, I'm going to go down the meat aisle and those sorts of things. And so I'm thinking all of that because you said, are you going to the grocery store? So I'm thinking of myself being at the grocery store. And think about the processing time that takes, because I literally do that for everything. And I don't have a script because that involves executive function and I don't have any. But I did take notes, and I wanted to talk about some things that I don't understand. I don't understand idioms, metaphors, similes, or hyperbole. And so I'm going to read through these, so bear with me. An idiom is an expression that conveys something different from its literal meaning, and that cannot be guessed from the meaning of its individual words. Between a rock and a hard place is an idiom that means in a difficult or bad position with no way of getting out of it. What makes an idiom different from a figure of speech is that its non-literal meaning is already familiar to speakers of the language. Other things like butterflies in my stomach, hand in hand, out to lunch, to make ends meet, those sorts of things. And so I totally don't understand those at all. And then I have to think about in pictures what it is, and then process it, then retranslate it from visual into words that I can understand, but then it's still visual, but the visual has to change. So the visual would be changing from, killing two birds with one stone to seeing people doing, two things at once. And so I go through that process with everything like that. The next one that I don't understand is figures of speech. A figure of speech is a phrase or an expression that expresses an idea by using words in a non-literal and imaginative way. Unlike idiom, it is possible to understand a figure of speech even if you have never heard it before. Metaphors and similes are figures of speech. If you're using words non-literally, 100% I'm not going to understand it. So a metaphor is a word or phrase typically used to describe one thing but unexpectedly used to describe something different. Metaphors make language interesting and help create imagery. They also make us aware of connections that we may not have thought of before. He was drowning in paperwork is a metaphor that makes a connection between having to deal with a lot of paperwork and drowning in water. Well, if I hear that he's drowning in paperwork, I'm going to see a bunch of papers in a pool and a guy or a girl flailing and, trying to swim through paper. And so that's the first thing that comes to my mind. So I have to filter all of that out, restructure everything, process it into a picture or a visual that makes sense to my brain. The same thing with similes. A simile is an expression that uses the words like or as to describe something by comparing it with something else. A simile is like a metaphor, except that a simile uses the words like or as to signal that a comparison is being made, such as, she's as fierce as a tiger is a simile, but she's a tiger when she's angry is a metaphor. None of that matters to me because no matter what you're saying, I see a tiger. So there's that. Last one here was hyperbole. And it says a hyperbole is language that describes something as better or worse than it really is. Hyperbole is really just a fancy word for exaggeration. So I really don't understand what all of that means, but no matter what it is you're doing, no matter what it is you're saying, no matter how you slice it, I'm going to see that thing in visual first. Talking about my speech pattern and everything like that, I have these little pauses every time I'm talking, because as I'm speaking, even me speaking, I'm thinking of things visual, and I need that little bit of space of time to be able to connect the visual with the words, with what my brain is trying to say, and then trying to make sure that it's all aligned and that whatever's coming out of my mouth is actually what I mean to say. And so I'm exhausted all the time. When I had jobs when I was working with people and I'm talking all day long, it's like I would come home just angry and exhausted. I would literally take a nap before bed because I was so tired that that's all I could think of to do. And I didn't know what to do with myself because I didn't know I was autistic. I couldn't explain it. All I knew is that I was constantly working my brain, trying to figure out what's going on, what's being said, what's the meaning behind the words, and then being called out for it if I ask for clarity. It's like, well, so what I heard you say was this. And they're like, no, that's not what I said. Okay, well then what did you say? Then they'll repeat it again in a different way, but it still doesn't make any sense in my brain because they're using all of these idioms and metaphors and hyperboles and similes and, you know, all of these other things. In my brain, you don't need to use imagery. I've already got all the images I need in my brain, and they're there 24/7, whether I'm speaking or not speaking, whether I'm watching TV, listening to music, no matter what I'm doing, there's a movie going in my head, and there's pictures associated with everything. And trying to get people to understand that part of how I communicate is a struggle because I still don't know how to explain it. I'm still processing it. Because you understand, I thought everybody thought in pictures. I thought everybody thought like I thought. I just thought I was doing it wrong, or I needed to do it better and I needed more practice. So my husband's really interested in how my brain works, and he's completely fascinated by it. And so he asked me, he's like, so when I'm talking or when anybody's talking and they say like the word the, or, you know, you're reading the word the, what do you see? And I said, I see the word the written like in Sharpie or magic marker or paints or, you know, watercolor, acrylic. I see it like on paper or on canvas. I see the word, you know. And so like if you say the number 3, I see the number 3, and it could be solid 3, it could be written like a bubble, it could be, you know, written on paper, it could be painted, it could be, you know, any number of ways. I said, but if you put a picture in my head by saying, you know, there's a 3 on a piece of paper, then I'm going to figure out that what color magic marker is it? It might be red. A red 3 is what I'm seeing. And he's just completely fascinated. And actually, so am I. So anyway, this video kind of went a different direction than, you know, I was planning on and everything like that. And that's making me a little bit nervous. I'm starting to sweat a little bit because most of it I wanted to talk about, first off, was, you know, just the not understanding, you know, conversations, because I'm too busy putting pictures to everything. And, you know, not being able to explain to people why I have all of these pauses when I'm speaking. And, you know, I've been told that, oh, you know, you're trying to, you know, be this person and you're trying to act all important and do all these other things. And I'm like, wow, no, I'm just trying to keep up with my brain, and I'm trying to process everything you're saying. And I'm trying to pay attention while sifting through all of the pictures in my head. So anyway, I don't know if you can identify with that, but if this is something that you've always wondered about and you're not seeing a whole lot of content out there about it, because I haven't, but if you think in pictures, let me know down below, and, you know, tell me a story or two about you. And if you didn't know about this, is it blowing your mind? Because it blew my mind. People don't think in pictures in movies like I do, and that is just so crazy to me. But anyway, I just wanted to share another little thought with you. I have a lot going through my mind these days, and as you all know, this is the best place for me to, you know, kind of regulate all of those emotions and to, you know, get things out of my head and, you know, whatever, because, you know, I have a bunch of movies going on in my head, and so now I can't match my words up with the movies, but you get the point. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed spending some time with me again today. I always enjoy spending time with you. And like I said earlier, leave me a comment down below. Do you think in pictures? I'd like to know. Oh, I almost forgot. Make sure you drink plenty of water. Stay hydrated. Make sure you're feeding yourself. And, you know, make sure you're going to the bathroom before it's too late. Grandma loves you, and I will see you in my next video.